Hey everyone, welcome in to Patterns Tell Stories. I'm your host Klaus, and today we're going to be talking about the UAP hearing that just happened yesterday. With me today for the first time is a new co-host. It's Garrett. Hey man, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Good to have you here. It's going to be great to have someone to talk to, just generally, but to bounce stuff off of on here. And I think it makes it more enjoyable for everyone. I think when it's not just me talking at my computer. And yeah, man, it's great to have you here. You're like a encyclopedia, and I think it's going to be great moving forward with you on the podcast. So just wanted to welcome you, and yeah, I think it's gonna be great.
Thanks, dude. I really liked the last conversation we had, and it looked like people on Twitter really liked it too. And the Twitter Spaces we've done were like wildly successful, I think, and they were really productive conversations. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what's coming up and talking about this meeting and talking about a couple other things.
Yep, sounds good, man. So let's just get into it then. My expectations for this were pretty low. It was pretty crazy the night before. It turned out that Tim Burchett, who had been leading this effort for a while, he'd been very public on TV and in interviews and going on podcasts and stuff like that. It was pretty clear, at least, from a PR perspective, that he was taking the lead. And he made it sound like he was chairing this thing. He was going to be directing everything. And apparently that wasn't really the case. The night before, it came out that he wasn't actually the chairman. And I mean, he never really was. So that was kind of a weird thing. And then they kind of made it seem like, oh, there was a miscommunication, which I don't know. I didn't have a good feeling going into it. And there was just a lot of weirdness there. So I was kind of personally a dick about it on Twitter, just kind of like what the hell? What is going on here? Why are they fucking this up? The night before the hearing's supposed to go on. It's gonna kind of destroy the credibility of this whole thing and make it seem like a joke. But I don't know. I guess it got straightened out, and when it started out, the new head of it, who kind of took Tim Burchett down a notch. I forget his name. He is the chair of the House Oversight Committee. I can't remember his name. He was pretty boring opening it up. So he kind of went on and droned on and was saying things about his childhood, how he was interested in UFOs, to open this hearing. And I had a bad feeling then too. I'm like, oh man, this is gonna go to hell, and we're gonna be set back. It actually, as the hearing went on, it picked up, and it actually turned out to be it turned out to be really, really positive. I think once people started hearing what Ryan Graves and Dave Fravor and importantly David Grusch had to say about what was going on and their experiences with the UFO phenomenon throughout their time in the government, it was kind of taking these people a little by surprise. I think just hearing how sincere these witnesses were and how serious they view this subject, I think caught their attention as it went on, and kind of they started perking up and asking more pointed questions, and making a point to show that they were engaged in this, and it was nice to see that. And I think Burchett kind of redeemed himself. He said some of those dumb things he says, but he really asked the right questions. He asked the questions that got the best answers. And we'll go into those a little bit. But what was your general takeaway from the whole thing?
I like what you said about Tim Burchett. I thought he really laid it down and made a lot of people proud. And he is kind of like a hillbilly a little bit in his delivery, but he is a patriotic person, I'll tell you what. And when he opened it up and he was talking about how the Pentagon, the past however long since he's been elected, I think 5 years or so, he said that every year they fail their audit miserably. And nobody has the guts in Congress to stand up and say that this isn't okay. and that you guys work for us. And I just really liked how he opened up the meeting with that command, and he made it very clear that if our pilots are being threatened, or if they're not able to defend themselves adequately, or their careers are at stake for reporting these things intelligently, that he just made it very clear that they have our back and they want to get down to the bottom of this. And I like everything you said about it, and just hats off to Tim Burchett, because he's definitely been doing his homework on this topic, and he really cares if Americans are safe.
Yeah, I felt really, bad for being kind of a dick to him about it on Twitter. I doubt he even saw what I said, but I was going after him pretty hard because I was pretty pissed off that like this whole thing got messed up at the last minute. But during the hearing, he thanked his staffers for doing the main research. Like I think that's kind of one of the biggest things with the whole congressional research into this, is that the staffers really do, I think, 90% of the work when it comes to this. They're the ones who are involved. They're the ones who are getting briefings a lot of the time. Even Congress people aren't even in the room. The staffers are the ones taking the notes and, judging the character and credibility of these witnesses, before they go on the stand like they did yesterday. As someone who is really invested in this topic and who really appreciates what went into the hearing yesterday and just the general interest in this subject from Congress and writing the new legislation from Chuck Schumer, I personally would like to thank all the congressional staffers for putting in the effort and making sure that this gets done the right way. There's a lot of landmines in this subject, and it's really easy to get caught up on hoaxes and misinformation and that kind of thing. And I just think the people who have put this together behind the scenes have done a really, really good job, especially lately with the legislation and then with this hearing. So they have my full full appreciation for the work they've done on this.
Yeah, and I want to say that, even you pointed out how it could have went so off the rails
totally
early on when Burchett was tweeting like, "Hey, I'm not going to be chairing this meeting anymore." And I got to be honest, dude, I was worried that any one of these people could have flaked or said that I don't want to do this, or I don't know what even potentially could have happened, but I'm very relieved that everybody showed up, and it seemed like everybody really got down to business and got down to what they were planning for a while. And even when David Grusch was talking and they're asking him about is there a disinformation campaign? Have you been retaliated against? And when he's giving the affirmative to these scary questions, things just got way more dead serious in that room.
Yeah.
And you could see it. Grusch was hats off to Grusch, because Grusch didn't even blink. He was really, I think I heard you say it, that he was in his element, and this was his world. And he just came very prepared, and he knew what he could and couldn't say. And I just saw a little bit of fear in that room, because whether it's a cover up or whether it's the phenomenon itself, it just seemed like people were not feeling secure about it,
Yeah, it was there were some really intense moments, especially when Grusch was well, I guess when all of them were testifying. And that was the cool thing, because I know in the last episode we were talking about how these witnesses were probably the right ones to be up there for this specific hearing. And I think we were pretty right about that. They brought credibility to this, even more so than I expected. Graves obviously has his aviation safety hat on. He brought a very intense case that I guess he found through his foundation, or he heard about or was reported through his foundation. I think someone said that on a space last night. I could be wrong, but even Graves saying that he's not really one to go into that kind of thing. So it was really cool hearing that from him about the red cube, the football field sized red cube that came out of the ocean and then hovered over Vandenberg Air Force Base for, I guess, 45 seconds. Like all the Boeing contractors were there on the landing pad or something. And this giant, 100-yard wide red cube just hovered over them and it just shot off into the, and disappeared. I don't know. It's crazy.
That's what AOC asked about, right?
Was it her?
I know she asked a pretty informed question about defense contractors to Ryan Graves, and then she asked him another question about UAP. But the fact that she was there at all, I was like, whoa. I know she's involved with some intelligence stuff, but like she was asking pretty good questions, man. And I was so proud that this wasn't a partisan thing. They weren't asking partisan questions. They like everybody there, even Gates was asking informed questions, and they wanted to know what's up.
That part was nuts. The bipartisanship was, I tweeted that should have been a headline in itself. Just with how divided our country is, it almost makes you wonder if it's just like they're just doing that shit for show, like just being so crazy because they look like actual normal people in this hearing, and like it was like the Twilight Zone almost. It was dead serious. There was no sniping. There was zero partisanship. I feel confident saying that. There, none at all. There was no back and forth. It was all dead set, all focused on the witnesses. And it's just not something you see these days. And it speaks a lot to the subject of UFOs that it can bring people together and kind of make them forget about the bullshit that takes over our social consciousness every day online and stuff like that. So it was great to see that.
Yeah, and I think that these witnesses were not only such good decisions in general, but like these guys, since those 2017 videos came out and the New York Times article came out, these guys have like been on Joe Rogan, and they've become at least Fravor and Ryan Graves have become pretty much household names in America. And they're still credible people, even after all those years where people have been able to criticize them. On top of that, they add this senior guy, Grusch. And I just thought that it really held water. And another thing was we got another ATIP mention for Luis Elizondo.
Yep.
So the people that keep questioning that's another one under oath. I think Commander David Fravor said that he worked with ATIP and Luis Elizondo. And dude, it drives me nuts when people continue.
And Lou was there.
Yeah.
Lou was there too. That was great to see.
Yeah. He looked good. Everybody looked good, man. I was so proud of everybody in that conference hall.
Yeah, man. So let's get into, I guess, a few of the specifics. I just wanted to also say that Fravor was a delight to watch up there. He's such a fucking pilot, he's so confident. And one of the funniest parts of that whole thing was when they were talking about the Tic Tac, and forget who it was, but they asked Fravor, they asked him, could any of our weapon systems take down the Tic Tac, basically? And he was like, no, it would have just left. like just the thought of that, the thing would just the thing would just like peace out. Yeah, it wouldn't even have to worry about any sort of top of the line human weaponry. It would just be like, nope. Yeah, Fravor, there was no doubt in his assessment of that. It was really funny to me.
That was something that confused me about these shootdowns earlier in the year, whether it was balloons or UAP or whatever, was that Fravor's testimony made it sound like they could not have engaged this Tic Tac if they wanted to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the way that they made it sound like, oh, well, we're able to actually shoot something down is like, I feel like it just goes to show that, like, I feel like there's a whole multitude of things that could be at play here. And it's not necessarily just balloons and UAP. It could just be a matter of like different technologies and different stealth and different. The list goes on, but Commander Fravor's testimony just made it really sound like the Tic Tac would be, if they were to engage it, that it would have just been hopeless. And like you said, it would just peace out and go into space.
It's interesting because I had the same kind of cognitive dissonance when the shootdowns happened. Because originally I was like, yeah, it's just balloons. Like I convinced myself it's just balloons. And that's, I think, kind of what everyone did. There was a little hope there, like maybe it's something weird. And then, it got kind of shady when they weren't releasing any information. So then I was kind of like, all right, maybe it's not just balloons. Maybe it's, some sort of, reverse engineered bootleg UAP tech. That was my next logical conclusion. And that they didn't want to recover it because it was, some Lockheed, bootleg like Tic Tac that couldn't actually act like a real non-human engineered Tic Tac. But similarly, and they wanted to keep that secret. But that was my next thought. And then I don't know, man, it's just so fucking weird that they won't release anything about it. And Grusch said during the hearing that, he's seen the video of these things that were shot down. And he said there's no reason the public shouldn't see them if they, take out whatever information that's, would identify the classified sensors that took these videos. But it's just so bizarre to me that they won't release this stuff. I don't know what kind of can of worms that would open, but I can't imagine it would be anything more than, those 3 Navy videos we already have. What do you think about that?
If I'm being honest, I think if Biden came out and showed a video of us annihilating some sky jellyfish or something that we don't understand, I think that I would be like, it would be shocking, man. Like I don't. The thing is I don't have enough data to even give an informed opinion. Like I don't know exactly what's floating around or why they don't want to talk about it, because whether it's a foreign thing, a technological thing, or an NHI thing, either way, people can get super afraid. So that's usually, in my experience, a big reason that they'll cover this type of stuff up is like a panic like that magnitude would be considered national security. So and even if they didn't know if it was any of those 3 things, that's still like enough to scare people, because not having an answer isn't the thing that they want to step up on a podium and say. So I don't know, because if they don't know where it's from, like truly don't know the origin of some things, I don't know what they could even say in a press conference, So I don't know. I hate to give them a pass on making things confidential, but I still understand that like certain things have been deemed to like just be too risky sociologically to just like drop in and not like look at how sensitively they're handling this process of disclosure, and how like, in my opinion, it seems pretty meticulous, and like how they're trying to go step by step by step. And I don't know, I think something like that would be like too much too fast, and it would almost be like shocking to the whole process, if that makes sense.
So I'm just wondering like what the threshold is. What has to happen for them to like address it or acknowledge it, Is it, I mean, clearly not shooting one down. And then they lie about it. Maybe they didn't lie about it, but there's a discrepancy, because on the day that the Alaska one was shot down, Natasha Bertrand on CNN reported that the FBI had recovered something and they were taking it in for analysis. And then now the official story is that they didn't recover anything. If it's something that they're able to shoot down, I don't know why they would lie about it. It's just hard to,
because that demonstrates that you're able to protect against that threat.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So like, if anything, that would be kind of a flex, but
that's why they let the fucking Chinese balloon drift all the way across the country, was so they could make a show out of it and say, hey, we can protect you from this thing. They did that. So what was different between the balloon and these three other objects? I don't know. I mean, it's just bizarre to me that it's just gone away. Like, I guess it's the 24-hour news cycle and, everyone's TikTok brain or some shit, but yeah, it just disappeared.
What did they end up saying about the balloon that we do know about? Did they say it said it was like private citizens, right? It wasn't some military thing either. I could be butchering that.
Oh, the Chinese
from what
balloon?
I remember, yeah, the Chinese balloon. Didn't they say it was some civilian?
Yeah, something like
Just
that.
like standard, nothing really that special. Did they ever give like a comprehensive analysis of what even that was?
No, there was actually like a recent article. I think you're right, where it said that it wasn't even collecting intelligence. I believe. I think that's what happened. And then they're just like, yeah, like threw it under the rug. I don't know. It's so fucking weird. Yeah. Let's get off the balloon talk because shit is.
Yeah, you're good, dude.
Oh man. I just remember that like typing the word balloon 1,000 times over a day back in February. It's just like I fucking hate the word balloon.
Yeah, and it's boring because it's just like there's nothing to it. You know what? What do you think of Grusch being scared of people being potentially killed over this shit, dude? Like,
yeah,
that's something that for people who are historians about this topic, a lot of people speculate that a guy named James Forrestal, who was like the United States' very first Secretary of Defense, they feel like this guy is a potential name who was killed over this topic. Now, that's long before my father was even born. But the stories I hear about it and the reputation destruction I hear, the stories of people that are going to come forward and say something and then from what I understand, Forrestal, he ended up like dying jumping out of a hospital window or something.
Yeah, didn't they put him in
it a suicide or a mental institution?
Yeah, I think they put him in a mental institution. I mean, if that's the theory that he was murdered, I think the logical reasoning there was he was in that mental institution for reasons that weren't legitimate.
Yeah. And that guy was like, he was the Secretary of the Navy up until 1947. And that's just one example of someone who potentially could have been involved with that a very, very long time ago. The modern example, David Grusch being worried about this and worried about people potentially being killed. You could see that people in that room were genuinely concerned. And that just adds even more to the amount of bravery that it took for David Grusch to come forward and talk. And I think that guy just needs a whole lot of support right now, even though I know that the internet is already like gushing with support. The media, I don't think, is adequately covering this right now. And if people are like on the fence about whether this guy means well or not, I just feel like it's worth reminding that he has no reason to lie about this.
This is something that drives me insane. So I'm seeing, post hearing news coverage or basically suggesting that he's crazy. Some of these, like there was one article I saw in Business Insider, and it was essentially calling out his previous interview with Ross, where he said the Italian UFO crash in 1933 was the first, crash retrieval, which he basically repeated in his congressional testimony. But the writer, or the journalist who wrote this piece, the headline was basically saying this intelligence officer has said crazy things about UFOs before, referring to his interview with Ross, where he said the same shit he said to Congress under oath. But it was clearly a hit job. And they took a screenshot of him at the hearing where, everyone has like, if your computer freezes, right? and your face is stuck. It looks weird. So they took like one of those pictures and put it as the main picture on the article. So he kind of looks like, so it's like, it's fucking so intentional, and it drives me crazy. Because he's saying the same thing he said to Ross in this hearing, but they're making it seem like he said crazy shit before, so you shouldn't take him seriously. It was one of the most infuriating things. I saw it like a couple hours ago, and I just like almost lost my fucking mind, man. That kind of shit drives me nuts.
Wasn't Grusch preparing executive briefings for like the White House?
Yeah, man.
What planet are these people on that a funny picture?
It's crazy. And it makes me wonder. It really makes me like suspicious. And I don't like being conspiratorial about this stuff, but it really makes you wonder, like, what incentive do they have to like be so direct in their, discrediting of this guy? Like, it makes no sense. Like, why would you go out of your way? Like this journalist who has like 200 followers, I don't know, she writes about like mooses or something when she's not writing about, discrediting David Grusch. It's fucking weird that she would go out of her way to basically like take down this guy and Business Insider. And I don't know, it just makes me so suspicious. And I hate feeling like that because, I want people to trust the media. I want people to be able to read this stuff and, feel like they're being informed in a really meaningful way. But when this shit happens like this, I can't help but feel like there's something going on. There's some sort of intelligence influence behind the scenes. And I don't know. I just wish this shit didn't have to happen like this, but I guess it just reinforces the cover up and how serious it is. And most of all that, they gotta be fucking transparent about it, or people they're gonna have be conspiratorial about this stuff.
Well, that's the thing about conspiracy theories, is that when people don't have the data to make informed decisions, that's what you're left with. There's bizarre conspiracies that usually fill in the cracks. And like with UFOs, we see that like wildfire. It's so hard to get reliable information that is dependable and trustworthy. And it's because of all those reasons that you just mentioned. I feel like everything you said about Grusch is true, dude. And I think that people can see through those bum articles. Like people that write articles like that are just set out to be critics, I don't think that they really like change the tides that much. Yeah. To be quite honest, dude, I never really see them making that coherent of an argument. I usually see when they're talking about this topic, you can see their ignorance very, very quickly as to the historical significance and the amount of actual scientists, legitimate scientists that have studied this topic. People just don't give it the respect it deserves, but that can be humbling. And I don't want to trash the person you just mentioned for their article, because I haven't personally read it. But,
yeah, I already did that enough.
Constantly.
I probably made her life hell on Twitter today. I'm sorry.
Yeah, dude, I think it's just something that like we all need to learn more about this, because I know that there's someone that has a piece of this that I need. And the problem is when people write stuff in bad faith, that's when stuff really puts a bad taste in your mouth, because now you're not even trying to give the people facts. Now you're trying to distort and to bend things. And that's a whole different ball game.
I kind of feel bad now.
Oh, don't feel bad. People write mean stuff on the internet all the time.
That's true. I wasn't mean either. I was pretty fair about it. But all right, let's dive into a few other things here. Biologics. I haven't heard that phrase before. At least, I've heard of, biological evidence, but biologics, it probably means the same shit, right? I would assume.
What does it mean to you? Like when you hear that, what do you think? Do you think tissues? Do you think like things that can actually be looked at under a microscope, or do you think a whole other realm?
You mean like silicon life forms? Is that what you
Right,
mean?
like different types of life.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, if we understand life as things based with like ribonucleic acid, it possibly some new thing,
Mhm.
something that exists in a whole other way. That's kind of what I meant by that.
Yes. They just came out with an article, I think like last month, talking about how there's a different kind of I believe it's called XNA. Uh, I forget what it's stands for, but it's basically like there was a precursor to RNA.
Yeah, as you said that, I'm trying to pull up. I was reading Lawrence Krauss. He's a theoretical physicist, and he did a huge tour with Richard Dawkins in the 2000s, and it might have been into the 2010s too. And I think they called it the Unbelievers Tour. But essentially, they wanted to try to like explain the origins of the universe without having to resort to some mythical means.
Mhm.
They were really trying to take a stab at like trying to talk about ideas like we're talking about right now, like non-life to life, how that process might look, and if there is a precursor to RNA. He mentions in this book he wrote called "The Universe from Nothing." He talks about how years and years ago, that you would be hard pressed to find people who thought that life could arise from non-life. And he's saying that now it's commonplace for scientists to hold that belief that it is possible, you
Yeah.
know? So
Right.
it's only a matter of time before like these scientific things that have been status quos for a while, as we gather more evidence, that's the beautiful thing about science, is that it can change its mind when the evidence points towards one way or the other.
Well, I searched biologics on Google, and it took me to biopharmaceutical, the Wikipedia page. Biologics redirects here. So it says, biopharmaceutical, also known as a biological medical product, or biologic, is any pharmaceutical drug manufactured and extracted from or semi-synthesized from biological sources. It's different from totally synthesized pharmaceuticals. They include vaccines, whole blood components, allergenics, somatic cells, gene therapies, tissues, recombinant therapeutic protein, and living medicines used in cell therapy. So you have tissues in there. So I assume that's probably what he's talking about.
Well, imagine if they found something advanced that like people that's one of the like common speculations, right? Is that
Mhm.
if someone were to put some pilot or avatar in a craft, that they're gonna like essentially construct a pilot, a space pilot
Yeah.
that can withstand the conditions of space and withstand the conditions of the craft, and like I don't know the relationship of consciousness, and that this is all speculation, but the idea that you would like make something that would be well suited to travel that long distance that we're talking about through space, I feel like that's not out of the question that it might be some sort of advanced species avatar. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, that sounds exactly like what we're talking about here. This sounds like some sort of synthesized biological avatar. Yeah, it's something we would make.
Well, didn't we make a sheep? Like, come on, dude. We can crank
Yeah,
out, dude.
it's
Just think
true.
about
Make a
CRISPR and
sheep.
like what I'm, dude. CRISPR scares me so much.
I
I don't
know.
want to talk about CRISPR that much, but it is one of my biggest fears is CRISPR, because I forget who
CRISPR
said it,
phobia.
but yeah, dude. They were saying, who was it? It was someone I didn't like, but they made a like great point and I was speechless. They were like, did you know that if one of our enemies or any foreign country or any country that wanted to, if they wanted to really apply CRISPR technology, a sophisticated CRISPR technology, he was like, they could make a new species within 20 years.
Oh man.
And I was like, oh my God. I was terrified. She was just saying like a whole country of people with like 160 IQs. I'm like, dude, that is terrifying. That is not, I don't think that would work good. That is not
God.
like that sounds way too Jurassic Parky to me.
Biologics can refer to a wide range of biological products in medicine. However, in most cases, the term is used more restrictively for a class of therapeutics that are produced using biological processes involving recombinant DNA technology. These medications are usually one of three types: substances, monoclonal antibodies, and receptor constructs. Um, yeah, this is straight up synthetic biology. So whatever these beings are, it sounds like whatever has been collected from these crash sites are synthetic.
Yeah, I mean that was my best guess based on what you described, and based on like what we've talked about just in general. I mean, sending something through space, um, yeah, it would make sense. You know, it's
Mhm.
just something that like it's hard to like. I'm so used to not being satisfied with an answer,
I
and
know, right?
after this under oath testimony, I'm like, okay, this is like now we have a little bit we've kind of scratched the surface of what to kind of look into, you know.
Yep.
um that's something that I thought a whole huge benefit of having these witnesses was now we have a roadmap forward, you know. And
Mhm.
I know that before there was a broader roadmap, but like now that the testimony is done and it went well and the public is interested in it, now really fun things can happen, in my opinion. And now we kind of have a roadmap forward, and we know, like, assuming that they get these names from Grush and they know the names of like uh, good witnesses. I think he used the term hostile witnesses.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what that meant, so I wanted to ask you about that. But like now they have a much clearer path forward, in my opinion, and I'm excited to see what's next.
Yeah. As far as hostile witnesses, I assume he's talking about people, who work on the programs who are probably going after him and his family. That's what it seemed like to me when he said that.
I didn't know if he meant that or people that are just like not telling true information in their testimony. But what you said makes more sense to me. I'm so unfamiliar with this whole process,
Mhm.
and I'm honestly so impressed by David Grush. Like he sounded so professional and put together
Yeah.
and intelligent, and like what you could tell that he had done this at the highest of highest level in terms of discussing high level information and classified information. So just again, tip of the hat to him because he was like so well prepared,
Mhm.
and even in the face of all these like potentially they were Burchett was talking to him like they had talked about the fact that he had been threatened, and if they're aware of that and still coming forward, that is true bravery.
Yeah, and I think it was in a Daily Mail article, a few months ago, where I think it was Danny Sheehan, talking about people flying drones over his house. That's fucking crazy, dude. Like, how do you deal with that? And to still come forward and to still go testify while you're being harassed to the point of people flying fucking drones like outside your window. Like it's insane. It really that also really makes it even more obscene that people are going after him for his autism and shit like that. It's just like these people are going through fucking hell. Like, just leave them alone. It's like God. But it also makes them that much more impressive and that much more admirable and patriotic in my eyes. I think he's honestly David Grush is, an American hero, very much so. Very much like Lou too. These guys go and do what they do for their country. They don't do it for recognition. And that's pretty clear from what kind of hell these guys have gone through in order to get information out for us to for us to see it. And it's just it sucks that they have to go through the gauntlet of conspiracy theories that have been perpetuating for decades, but they knew what they were getting into, I think. And it's that's why they're still with it. That's why they're still going for it, because because they knew what was coming, and they can handle it.
The term conspiracy theorist has been used for years to alienate people that are trying to think critically about real emotional, important topics. And JFK was one example of that.
Yeah.
But like they would use the term conspiracy theorist for people who would say that like maybe Lee Harvey Oswald didn't act alone. Maybe a group of people had an interest in JFK dying. And when people would say ideas like that and they'd be called a conspiracy theorist, they'd just be ridiculed and laughed at. And then it just became like people would understand socially that like I would rather not, like, if you don't have the full set of facts to begin with, then they can just poke holes in whatever story you try to tell, because if somebody has that information and they're playing that shell game with you, then it's pretty much a lose-lose for the person who doesn't have the information. Because even as well-intentioned as it may be that they're trying to get the truth, it's so easy for the other side to ridicule them because they're the one that hid the pebble in the shell, So like, it's something that Jacques Vallée was talking about that in the Archives of the Impossible conference that you sent me, where he's talking about the truths of the Greek god of truth, Aletheia.
Yeah.
And he was saying that like she cannot be smarter than the people that she's dealing with. Meaning like if the people don't have all the information to make informed decisions, they can see the truth right in front of their face and they won't even be able to recognize it, And I feel like that's something that we might have to deal with here, is that if people don't have the appropriate like frame of reference to understand what we're dealing with and what we're talking about, or if someone tries to pervert it or warp it or make it like something that it's not, it can really take their eye off the ball. And this topic is something that like I just saw the seriousness that like our Senate and Congress had in that conference, and it's just made me really excited.
Yeah. And when it comes to like conspiracy, I wasn't trying to use conspiracy theory in like a derogatory way, but sometimes there are conspiracies, and that's what this is. That's what the UFO cover up is. It's a conspiracy. So if you call it what it is, it shouldn't be stigmatized like that. And that's kind of the fucked up thing too, is they can play both sides. They can feed disinformation and then ridicule you for believing it.
Yeah, or you get a Doty situation.
Exactly.
Where somebody is just feeding wrong information, not even knowing what the repercussions are going to be, but he's just following orders. And that's one example, but like, you think he's the only person, dude? You know that there's probably like a handful at least of people just feeding bad information and bogus stuff into people's DMs.
And people are still listening to him, literally. Doty on Twitter. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, don't listen to Rick Doty on Twitter. Are you crazy?
And half the time it's the same people that have all these questions that haven't been answered about TTSA or Elizondo. It's a complete double standard.
It really
because
is.
Let me put it this way, dude. If Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon, the Apollo 14 astronaut, if he had written a letter saying that he wanted to distance himself from Luis Elizondo for overstepping his boundaries the way that he wrote about Stephen Greer, people would be losing their shit. And I just noticed people give Greer a pass, and it just seems like ignorance is bliss, because like Edgar Mitchell did write a letter that said that, and he did separate himself, and he does have a history of overstating things. And it's a shame that this topic does have credible people, and it's just constantly pumped with a bunch of baloney.
Yep. That is crazy. The whole Greer thing, him going on that podcast, that Sean Ryan podcast, calling Lou a disinformation agent. And it's like, this is a dude who fucking charged thousands of dollars to shoot flares out of a fucking airplane, and people believed they were UFOs and that they were summoning them. Like, if that's not a credibility killer forever, what is in the subject? Like what does it take to
Writing a book.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Like, what the fuck, man? Oh my god, it's crazy. And Greer's made like 3 documentaries. It's all like basically Russian propaganda. It's fucking nuts, dude. I don't know.
Yeah, and
Anyway,
they go off of the theory of Werner von Braun,
I
a
know.
former SS officer, and yeah, I don't even want to talk about
Yeah.
him because I don't think he deserves to be. I don't think his theories deserve to be discussed because
Right.
he's lost his credibility.
Right. And that's the frustrating part about Grusch, and specifically Grusch getting lumped in with all that shit. Like, I just it's basically like they're that one article I was talking about was, it's basically like they're treating him like Greer. And it's like, no, this is a, this dude basically had access to like the most classified satellites in the US government arsenal. Like, this guy, he's serious. And you could tell. And I'm glad he got his time in front of the Congress to show that. Um, a friend, Katie Howland, basically was saying she's been around Congress, a lot. She I think she worked kind of with lobbyists and stuff, and she was saying that this guy knows his stuff. He knows the lingo. He's very clearly been around that for a very long time. So, someone told him some crazy shit, or maybe they lied to him, but it doesn't seem like it, man. He was on the UAP task force. I don't think he'd be saying this shit if he thought someone was lying to him. I think people he trusts, he's very credible himself. And I think people that a credible person trusts, like Grusch, telling him this stuff, he wouldn't be repeating it if he didn't trust the people who were telling him this. And like, that part I don't get either, is like, people are lying to him. It's like, well, if you trust Grusch to say that he's heard this stuff, then why wouldn't you trust him to, be repeating stuff from people that he trusts? Like, I get that it's like secondhand information, but like, there has to be some sort of tangential credibility lent there, right?
Oh, something is rotten in the fridge.
Yeah.
When you hear the phrase, I served my country and I took an oath to protect against all enemies, foreign and domestic, as a reason to coming forward, you know something is rotten in the fridge. And I know I've heard Elizondo say that. And I believe David Grusch has said that as well. And these are, I think, internal issues in some of these places that, like, the transparency is one thing, but like the threatening things and the disinformation campaigns, and like, these are things that when we were talking about Rick Doty, like, Paul Benowitz was an American citizen, you know, and that's something that, like, I feel like also needs to be nailed down, is like, is that okay to run operations against our own citizens for whatever reason, whether or not it's in the interest of national security or not? What is the legality of those things? You know, what is the legality of those programs and our taxpayers paying for those programs? Those are just the type of questions that keep popping into my head as we're talking about this, because like, not only are there layers to this, there's also like a very sinister side to this.
It just sounds super dark. Like, these programs, they sound like once you're in them, you can't get out. It really sounds like like a dark place to work and to like spend your existence. And I feel like that kind of has to do with how it was set up in the first place when they brought people over from Paperclip. It's just a really dark, you know, environment to kind of work in. I don't know. Maybe I'm just overthinking it, but yeah, it feels like once you're in, you're in, and you can't talk about it, and if you do, they'll fucking kill you. Basically, I feel like there would be people in there who don't want to be in there anymore. It seems like like prison, kind of. I mean, I don't know if people want out or whatever, and that's why this is happening. But you think about the Havana syndrome stuff, and you start to wonder, why are these aerospace employees suffering from this, and is it part of that harassment? Is it did Grusch suffer from Havana syndrome? I mean, I'm I'm just totally speculating there, but like, why wouldn't they use electromagnetic weapons like that, or anything like that? If they actually like murdered people, like, why wouldn't they try that first? I don't know, that's kind of where my head goes with it, and I think that be a pretty good reason to hide what's behind Havana syndrome, is if you were aware that certain contractors were trying to keep people silent on certain technologies. I don't know anything towards that, to that effect. I just it would make sense to me.
Yeah, anytime I've ever looked into like these people that claim to be the what do they call them? TIs, targeted individuals, right? People who display these the symptoms of Havana syndrome, or like these, what they claim are like electromagnetic attacks on them. I People have been saying this for years and years, and they claim that they're being harassed, or I think they use the term gang stalked.
Yep.
And something that's extremely hard to prove, because like some of that technology it's made to not be detectable. It's non-lethal weaponry. And something that is interesting about it is like these when you mentioned paperclip earlier, is a lot of people think that was like a rocketry thing, solely a rocketry thing.
Nope.
And it wasn't. People need to like really take a look at who we were bringing over and what these guys were. I would say probably a good 1/5, 20% were mind scientists. And that's something that is a whole other realm. That's something like the MK Ultra program in the 50s. A lot of these names that you'll see involved in those early aviation medicine programs that were these paperclip guys were all involved in MK Ultra. And it's yeah, it gets dark really fast when you
Yeah.
start learning about the names of these guys.
They're like testing radiation on like, that's the kind of shit these guys were doing in Nazi Germany. It's like obviously that people were murdered over this cover up. It's and it's pretty crazy that Grush said himself, Burchett literally asked him point blank, have people been murdered to keep this secret? And he said, I've reported that evidence to the appropriate authorities. So that's like a non-yes, yes, basically. And that fact that that's not all over the news is just fucking crazy. Like, I don't understand that. Like, just because this is about UFOs, like the fact that someone testified under oath that people have been murdered over a cover up, and no one cares. It's bizarre. I don't get it.
Well, think about what we were talking about earlier in us really not being able to draw a conclusion from the set of facts that we've been given. And I think that's a big reason why we're not getting like huge articles yet, is that like, even though we've gotten this testimony, we don't know what to make yet, like we don't know the path forward. But I still think it's not being given a shred of the attention it deserves. But I think that could be a potential reason, is that like, even though we've got this testimony, we need to see like still the nature of this cover up and what's going on. Because like, I think that this process, although it's frustrating and slow, they need to probe it properly to understand that they're not going to like, like that part of a lot of what deception involves is like sending your enemy down a false path, and they call it making your enemy chase the white rabbit, right?
Mhm.
And because that's a strategy in war, is making people think that something is one way and maybe it is completely the other. So I I want to say that I understand why someone wouldn't write an article about it, but at the same time, like, we've still been told things that deserve to have hour-long 60-minute specials on them. Like, from each of these guys' testimony could have its own 60 minutes episode, in my opinion. Because what they're saying is that we're potentially sharing our planet with something else. And that is like, that's one of the big questions, right? Are we alone? And what happens after you die, right? And like, that is one of them, dude. That's like, yeah, everybody, our grandparents have been asking, are we alone? I remember my grandpa was like the first person that made me believe that we're not alone. As he said, he had a professor hold down he had like a really big outline of all the stars and like all of our like near solar systems and stuff. And he was like pointing at all these stars. And he was like, do you know the odds that all of this is just nothing, like void? And I just heard that as a little kid, and I was like, wow, that makes sense. And nothing's even changed, dude. That made perfect sense. And I like I said in the last episode, dude, I'm if we do get confirmation of that type of news soon, that really could be shattering for a lot of people and institutions. But like, I think we're kind of seeing how people are taking this information. It might end up being like, don't look up, like we were saying before.
Yeah. It seems like there's 10 articles out today that are like, nobody gives a shit about aliens. Like literally fucking NBC, like yeah, a bunch of other outlets publish articles basically with tweets. I also ripped in this guy a new asshole for his article, and then I saw there were like 10 others, so I kind of feel bad about that one too. But yeah, they're basically like, look at all these tweets, no one gives a fuck about aliens. So it's like, okay, if that's the case, then what's the big deal? Just fucking tell us. Like Rand Corporation was full of shit back in whenever they wrote that paper back in the 50s, I guess. Maybe not then, but now it's like if no one cares, then what's the big deal? Is it just because the cover up will get blown up and 20 old motherfuckers will go to jail? Like, is that really the reason? I'm sure someone has to have information, and that's another one where I get kind of confused, is the splitting apart of the tech and just the basic fact that we're not alone. Like, where's the line there? Why can't we make a distinction? And that also kind of brings me back to the biologics thing, is maybe the tech with the UAP and then these synthetic beings is also tech. So it's so advanced that maybe that's a dangerous thing to have out in the public sphere. I don't know. That was an idea I just had right now. But yeah, maybe you can't separate the tech from the NHI.
It depends on the nature of the NHI, I would assume, like this is all we've never had this confirmed. So it's always going to be speculation until we get that confirmation. Right. But like, as far as NHI goes, what do you consider NHI? Like,
Right.
like, let's say you're familiar with Mac Tony's book, right? The Crypto Terrestrials.
Oh yeah.
Would that fit as NHI to you? This like offshoot of human beings that is like our the way Tony's describes it, if I'm correct, is like it's essentially a cousin of ours that we've shared the planet with, but they've faced like an evolutionary bottleneck or something. And even though they're very technologically advanced, they have to conceal themselves and give the guise that they're extraterrestrial in order to try to, like, I guess, buy time or try to like manipulate the human gene pool enough to try to like find a way back into like having a flourishing population. Did I describe that okay?
Yeah, I love that theory so
Because
much. It's such a intense, like, it just makes sense to me. I mean, it's out there, but it's also makes a ton of sense. And that also explains kind of the whole trickster element that we talked about.
Oh yeah.
It's that would be inherent to a crypto-terrestrial species that was trying to survive like that. They would be, all of their interactions with us would be tricking us into thinking they're ET. And he also talked about how they might have a hive mind as well, and that was it's always a fun one to get into. But and it's very clear that that's kind of where we're headed, whether we want to admit it or not, through Twitter or just the internet or just AI. We're headed that way to where we're going to be one giant hive mind if we're not already.
Yeah, the crypto terrestrials, I know Tom would use that term a lot when he would talk about like his correspondence with the advisors, right? And then last year in the Journal of Cosmology, Hal Puthoff put out his, I think it was called Ultra Terrestrial Models.
Mm-hmm.
And he included the crypto terrestrial hypothesis as one of the ideas. But he basically laid out like all sorts of different scenarios of what this could be, whether it's a breakaway civilization, whether it's a crypto terrestrial, whether it's an extraterrestrial. He lays out all sorts of different ideas of what this can be and what other great authors have written. And I think that paper is worth a search for anybody interested in it, because they actually submitted a paper of Hal Puthoff's early in this last meeting, right? I remember, I think they submitted something from George Knapp, and they were talking about one of the scientific papers he wrote, because he's a physicist first and foremost. He's an electrical engineer, PhD from Stanford, and yeah, do you know anything about the paper they submitted by Puthoff before this?
Yeah, it was. I don't remember the full name, but it was about space-time metric engineering from the vacuum. So that was one that he wrote for OSAP, I believe. I know it's over 20 documents they did for OSAP and that kind of thing. And it's so funny how people are saying like OSAP wasn't a UFO program when they got like all this crazy shit they're trying to extrapolate into the future scientifically with. It's like it's clearly that's what they're going for. And they had another. This wasn't in the hearing, but there was another paper on advanced spaceflight cockpits, where it was basically separated from the outside, and it had to withstand all the movements that we all know UAPs do, basically. And yeah, it's definitely a UFO program. Just making that point.
Yeah, dude, I wanted to ask you about I wanted to ask you about this short story.
Okay.
And in this story, essentially there's this parasite that has latched itself onto human beings, right? And everybody has it. The way that they figure out how to end up killing it is with space travel. Once they like lose their connection to the earth and the link this parasite has with the earth, if it's like flops around like a fish, and they can see that it's like finally lost its grip over them. But an interesting part of this story is the mind parasites themselves are dogmatic creeds. So like I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but for somebody who's very dogmatic about a topic, you can see how that, I don't know, I thought it was just a very intriguing story, and it struck me as odd that the solution to beat the parasite was space travel, and the thing is with dogmatic creeds is like people cling to them as a crutch, and people don't use their critical thinking skills because of dogmatic creeds. And that's something that we need so pivotally right now, is critical thinking skills. And like we said earlier, I hope that this topic doesn't end up looking ridiculous because of the clown show that ends up coming along every time we get some sort of UFO news. There's always something right along with it, right?
Yeah.
I know when Grusch stepped forward, we got the Vegas backyard bullshit. I don't even know what that was, but it seems like there's always some sort of sideshow
Yeah, totally.
anytime there's any sort of big news. And I don't know, that short story I think is worth checking out for any fans of this topic, because I love the idea that what we're dealing with could be something we just don't know yet. Like before they understood what germs were, people would like bleed you out. You would like literally go to the doctor and they would have you bleed and like lose blood, and I'd be like, okay, you're done. And that would be their solution to certain problems,
Yeah.
was to bleed people until they learned what germs were, and that we've gotten entire germ theories and now we thoroughly understand it. I feel like it could be something like that.
That's fascinating.
Part of this NHI is something that is very small and something that maybe we just aren't quite grasping yet. What do you think of the possibility of something like that? Or have you heard any speculation from credible people about that type of stuff?
I mean, Elizondo has said a few times, he's talked about viruses living alongside us, and they might be extraterrestrial, and they've just been here the whole time, and living symbiotically or parasitically with us. He's mentioned that a few times. I do think that short story is like super interesting, and it makes me wonder. I remember something, and I don't remember the specifics as usual, but it's, I believe, like Edgar had something to do with Edgar Mitchell and his space flight and his psi attempts up there. I don't know. I think there's a connection there. I'm not. I don't remember specifically what it is. I don't know if you know anything about that, but something about consciousness when the further you get away from the Earth, there's changing consciousness. I
Yeah,
totally fucking butchered
I
that.
can try to. No, dude, you're good. I'm gonna try to piece this together, bro, because you have the pieces. So this is the story as I understand it,
Okay,
right?
good. You
Because
fucking know it. Of course you know it.
so
Thank God.
in Ed Mitchell, Apollo 14 was 1972, right? Because Apollo 11 was 69. That was the first one. It was a couple years after that. So 1972. Think about like in terms of psychic ability and where that's been. I don't think that we have Ed Mitchell's Institute of Noetic Science yet, right? We don't have these like the institutes that he ended up coming back from space and being like very inspired and encouraged. And from what I understand, when he went to space, he did a test with the psychic Ingo Swann, and he wanted to see if they could like read each other's thoughts in
That's
space.
what it is. Yeah.
And when they got back, either Ingo or Ed had been bragging that they were very successful in these tests, and NASA made a statement distancing themselves from Mitchell. And they said, we feel like Ed Mitchell is a patriotic American, but we do not agree with his like they were also worried about the fact that he was like supposedly using that mission time to do other shit. Like that's something that they're like, okay, well, this isn't what the mission was for. You know what I'm saying? So I can see why they could get criticism for that. But according to Ed Mitchell, when he was in space, he said he had like this borderline religious. I don't want to say religious. He had like a spiritual experience. Like he felt like this ultimate connectedness. He said he was looking at the earth and he said like how precious it felt, and how like so anyway, he got back to Earth, and he or Ingo had been bragging about how successful these psychic tests were. But after that, Ed Mitchell was involved with all sorts of stuff. That he was at SRI with Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff when they were testing Uri Geller, and I think that was in 1973. And after that, the psychic testing programs proceeded up until about like 1995 or so in an official capacity, right? So yeah, Ed Mitchell was really involved with that. I know that he, as I learned more about Dr. Andrea Puharich, I could tell that he had been working with Ed Mitchell on a few things. And there's one book that includes a study that they did together. So yeah, it's just an interesting field because Ed Mitchell really was inspired in a very deep level when he was in space based on his experience. And when he got back from space, he committed his life to studying consciousness and understanding this phenomenon. And he became like a big UFO guy too. Not in a UFO buff, hang at the conventions type of way, but like someone who wanted to give this subject real serious scientific inquiry.
Yeah, and he did with Wilson Davis notes. Just trying to make a segue back to the hearing. But yeah, man, it's I don't even know if we need to go back to the hearing, but it was it was awesome. The IRAD aspect of this whole thing is really interesting. That they're well, first of all, they're overcharging for all their weapons and shit. Like this was a 60 Minutes special a few months ago where they basically went and interviewed all these Pentagon auditors who were saying, Lockheed and Boeing, and they're overcharging by like 40% for these weapons. And what the guy basically said that, you know, if they had been getting a reasonable profit on this, we would have had a year of these missiles for free. Like that's the equivalent of the money that they're overcharging for these weapons. So that shit is going apparently towards these UFO programs, or you know, maybe conventional weapons programs through this IRAD, independent research and development. That was the insinuation I got from Representative Moskowitz and his questioning of David Grusch. So that in itself too, like that should be a fucking huge scandal, and no one's talking about it. Like under oath, this guy testified that these guys are basically stealing taxpayer money to fund these UFO programs, and nobody gives a shit. It's crazy.
The things that I kept jotting down as I listened to this meeting or hearing was that they were concerned about being able to like have the capability to defend themselves, right? So they asked them like, could our pilots have engaged the Tic Tac, or could they have defended themselves?
Yeah.
And like we said, it could have just zipped away into space or whatever. But then I was thinking about what I've read myself about UFOs and just like kind of what a common UFO encounter looks like, or can the physiological effects it can leave, you know? And so a lot of the time people and this is, I hate to speak or paint with such a broad brush because people report all sorts of different things, but like a standard UFO encounter, people describe a lot of the time is like an intelligent ball of light, right? Or an orb. And John Keel said that like a lot of the time he thought that these things were pure energy, intelligent energy. And that a lot of people, it can leave you with like surface burn, like microwave like burns to your skin if you come close to it. It can give you conjunctivitis symptoms, like you can feel like you have sand in your eyes. And there's all sorts of like emotion involved, right? And a lot of these people that report having a sighting has this like religious component. He said when he was in India, he was impressed by all the people who had reported seeing the Indian gods. And he had noticed that like culturally, the places he would go, people were reporting seeing things that matched their cultural frame of reference. And that makes sense.
Yeah.
At least to my crazy brain, it does. And so I was just thinking about like the nature of these types of encounters and the physical effects and health effects. Sometimes I wanted to caveat that by also saying is like, even though people can have burns and negative health effects, there's also healings that sometimes happen when they're visited by these things. And Sometimes it's a mixture of things. Like if you took the like Fatima example we were talking about the other night, that's an example of one where we had miraculous healings reported and you had negative health consequences, right? So it was kind of a mixed bag. So like when I was thinking about the types of encounters that people describe, part of the phenomenon seems or appears to me like a desire for it to come, right? So like when people do that type of protocol, quote unquote, that Stephen Greer talks about, the CE5 and trying to make things appear, a lot of the time people do report having certain things happen. Now the thing is that because our brains are playing tricks on us and we really, really want to see something? Or is it because there is something interacting with our consciousness? I've never really tried that type of stuff myself. But I do know that like if what John Keel and Jacques Vallée says is correct, that would explain all sorts of things. Like people report seeing the Yetis and the Bigfoots and Loch Ness monsters, all sorts of things like that. Is like people sit on park benches every day for months and months and years and just like really hope that they see just a glimpse of these things just once. And it makes you wonder if like our consciousness has something to do with one or multiple people seeing these things or them actually manifesting in some capacity. Because another thing they report is when they do see some sort of cryptid like that, they report that it smells horrible and that it's like a sulfurous smell. And I've also heard that it can get ice cold in the area also. When an apparition like that can happen. And something that made me like think about apparitions and Yetis and all that type of stuff and Loch Ness monsters was the Vatican. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Vatican created a group just in this last 365 days to study Marian apparitions, like Virgin Mary, glowing blue women.
Yeah,
and
scientifically, there's scientists like going to these sites, I guess, and studying them.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So that's something that I had jotted down that I was like, that's something that I don't even know what to make of that, or if that even has to do with this. But based on what I hear people like Diana Pasulka and Jacques Vallée talk about now, it seems like this certainly has something to do with UFOs.
Yeah, it's some kind of Tulpa-esque apparition. And it's consciousness manifesting in the physical realm.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the term experiencer, I feel like, is also a very broad term because of, like we were just discussing, the variety of possibilities that come out of the experience itself. Like there's people that claim that their diseases have been cured by encountering balls of light, right? So like that type of stuff doesn't invalidate somebody who's had a negative experience and vice versa, Right. And that's something that I feel like the more we examine this, the more we should examine guys like John Mack that have like really looked at this phenomenon and have tried to whittle it down into something that we can actually try to categorize, and maybe actually get better minds looking at. Because John Mack, he was the head of, what was it? He was a Harvard guy, and he was the head of I think it was psychiatric medicine, and whatever it was, he was a doctor, and he was studying people that he was a Harvard doctor, and he was studying people who had claimed to be abducted by UFOs or encountered UFOs, and he was also working with Ed Mitchell's institute, the Institute of Noetic Sciences. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah.
But they were like talking pretty closely with Jacques Vallée and doing all sorts of great work that a lot of people haven't really taken seriously because I don't know. This type of stuff is just made to seem ridiculous. But the more testimony we get and the more common it seems, like the way John Mack made it seem is that when they polled people, the amount of people that report having an experience like an abduction was mind-boggling. Like I thought it was going to be like 1 in like 20,000. Dude, I was like, I think it was correct, dude. I don't even know the right number. I don't want to say the number,
dude,
because it made me seem like every other person.
I'll give you a number.
Had an experience, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is how are we not talking about this?"
Dude, I'll give you a number right now. There was an Ipsos poll that came out 2 days ago. Ipsos, they're pretty accurate, I think, known to be an accurate pollster. And they did a poll on the paranormal, and they said, I believe it was 28% of people have woken up from sleep and sensed a strange presence. So extrapolate that out, and yeah, I'm sure it's way more than we think who have had some sort of, abduction experience. It's I just don't talk about it. I don't know, and regardless where it comes from, if it's physical or not, it's a lot of people having that experience of another presence that they can't sense with their actual senses, but they know it's there. And how are they sensing that? Like, what in their brain is perceiving this weird presence? And why are 28% of people reporting it upon waking? It's crazy to me that we're not looking into this. And it's clearly not something that they're imagining if they're reporting it to this, this pollster. But there's a lot there. And I think Colm Keller said something along the lines of, once we get to the UFOs, then the paranormal comes next. And I think Gary Nolan has said, the woo's right around the corner. I think UFOs is kind of the bridge to that sci stuff that seems crazy interesting. And I know Tom DeLonge definitely believes that. Yeah. When he's talking about supercharging our brains and, DMT and shit like that. And, seeing these AI beings outside of our regular perception. And it sounds like there's a lot to this that could be very beneficial. I know a lot of it sounds scary when it comes to NHI and, this whole biologic thing still has me reeling right now. It's fucking crazy that.
Yeah, it's important for us to figure out if there's life elsewhere. But something I was thinking about also was like, because people criticize, a lot of UFO buffs criticize Carl Sagan a lot, and consider him someone who stifled a lot of good research on this topic, even though based on what I've read, he seemed like someone who really wanted answers and was turned away when he wanted to get them. But he's someone that in Francis Crick and Leslie Orgel's directed panspermia paper, they cite Carl Sagan's work a few times, and they cite like his study of the planet Venus, and like he was a brilliant scientist and astronomer. And for those of you who don't remember or didn't ever see, he like had this long monologue, and I believe he made it also a book called The Pale Blue Dot. And he tried to like really pound home how isolated we are as of right now, and like how precious this planet is, and why we really have to get our act into gear. And because everybody who's ever been has been on this pale blue dot that's just on a speck of dust suspended in a sunbeam. And he just points out how small and precious our planet is, and how we just seem so eager for someone to come out of the sky and fix it all for us. And I think that was a huge takeaway that I get from Carl Sagan, was that he wanted human beings to determine their own future and their own destiny. And I feel that very strongly, that he wanted human beings to put themselves and like future generations in position to make mature decisions about where we move forward. And part of that is understanding how precious and like rare our life and our situation appears to be, and not take it for granted, you know?
Yeah, and that's kind of why I'm partial to a kind of crypto terrestrial hypothesis. And it's not even just like within the realm of like UFOs. It's, in studying Homo naledi and that, just our ancient ancestors that apparently lived alongside us with, the same cognitive abilities and a much smaller brain. Why did they go extinct? Did we just fucking wipe them out? Like, what happened to where we're the ones who made it this far? Um, what were other species, capable of, and why were they capable of it? Like, Homo floresiensis fucking sailed across the ocean. Like so much happened back then that had nothing to do with Homo sapiens, basically. And I think it's really important for us to figure that out. And I think that might be part of this whole somber idea that Lou Elizondo's put out there. Like, I feel like something happened. You said something happened where we rose to the top. But yeah, we are the only ones left. And I think it's important for us to know um, just kind of where we come from in order to figure out where the fuck we need to go. Because right now things are looking kind of crazy. And when it comes to, like you were saying, Sagan saying like we want aliens to come down and save us from ourselves. It's that's kind of the nerve-wracking thing about UFOs is that a lot of people in this subject like see it as a religion. And that's just as dangerous as as continuing on with literally believing in Christianity and all these organized ideologies that separate us. There needs to be some sort of unifying force, I think. And I think understanding our history together as a species and where we come from, and perhaps learning something very, very humbling about ourselves could probably do that better than aliens saving us.
Agreed. Agreed, dude. Because a lot of people do think about this phenomena in a religious context. Um, and that's okay, I guess. I'm not a fan. I wouldn't recommend it. And
Yeah.
like I said below, I mean, like like we were saying earlier, dude, William Burroughs might be right.
Right.
It might be dogmatic creeds that really are ripping human beings apart.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I just think with any ideology, people need to be individuals, and yeah, people need to think critically about the situation, and I think that's the instrument or the what would it be? That's the note I'm gonna keep on playing. Is that like we need to think critically about this phenomenon and what it could be, and we need to like admit that we could be wrong about certain things, because like the people that worry me the most in religion or in this topic are the people that simply know that they're right.
Yeah.
Because like I'm sure everyone has encountered those people. It's not a very endearing thing to meet someone who claims to know that they're right about topics like this, where it's very clear that like we still have a long ways to go before we understand this. So just like be careful of that, people. Like when you hear people saying that they claim to know everything about all of this stuff, really look at that and examine it and ask yourself, like, is this person really the person that knows? Like, and 9 times or 10 times out of 10, it's no, because they don't have any powers that you don't.
Right.
Okay, so like, I just think that it's something that people, yeah, keep thinking critically, because we need that really, really badly right now.
And that's the hard part about this too, is like a lot of people who are really into this like are kind of atheists almost. It's like religion for atheists, or that kind of thing. Like, I'm gonna be honest, like, I didn't really start diving into this like hardcore um until, you know, one of our like our dog passed away. And I'm like, fuck, like there's gotta be like he's gotta be out there somewhere, you know, that kind of thing. And then I've researched consciousness, and it, you know, kind of intertwined with the UFO phenomenon that um I hadn't been super interested in, but you know, it that's what kind of led me to like start looking into this stuff. And it could be, and I admit wholeheartedly that that's like kind of a religious motivation in a way to find meaning, you know, and that can be very dangerous. And it it's I luckily for me, I believe I've kind of harnessed it and turned it into a learning experience to where like I'm learning more and more. I don't really believe anything. Like I don't like there's still a 1% less, in my opinion, less than 1% chance that, you know, this is all a fucking lie. It's all a psyop. It could all go to shit tomorrow, you know? I don't think so, but it's totally a possibility. Like keeping your mind open is essential for not just this topic, but you know, everything. I mean, I don't blame people for like believing in shit. Like that's there are other things like, you know, I believe in, but it's when it comes to planting your flag somewhere and I don't know, paying someone money to fucking take you to the desert, see some UFOs, have some.
That's interesting that you called it religion for atheists.
Yeah, a little,
because that is something that like that is a good that see, because I consider and still do myself a non-believer, right?
right.
And the people that I had to like come to terms with the fact that there's people I consider credible people that report seeing things that I cannot believe. Like I can't. I just don't. I like don't even have the capacity in me to believe them, but I still trust this person, right? And it gives me like cognitive
Yeah,
dissonance.
yeah,
And but the amount of people that report having an experience, regardless of the cultural frame of reference, was astounding to me
mhm,
as a non-believer. And that's why I'm like, okay, well, I'm not gonna throw in my lot and say that this is an angel sent from Jesus, you know,
yeah,
or from Buddha, or like I'm not gonna. We don't need to jump to that, but I do think that there's enough to say that people are experiencing something. People aren't liars
yeah,
by and large. Like and because that was the thing I had to keep telling myself was like, oh, that they're crazy. That person's a liar. That person is just conning people. And like the more testimony I heard, especially on this topic, I'm like, this person did not lie about that. This person clear like it's a trauma.
yeah.
And
So the
a
thing,
lot of the time it's a trauma at least.
what people report is their own interpretation. That's like a huge part of it, and why a lot of it's unbelievable. I think is because people are going to report what they see, and what if what this thing is playing off their expectations. Some people are going to report some wild shit as opposed to, you know, a spaceship.
Dude, that's a good point. That's something Diana Pasolka was talking about, how the reporting of UFOs is like off right now because there's and historically it's like been a little crooked because there's been instances where people have bizarre, like they don't want to talk about it, but they'll have bizarre experiences and they'll report them, but they're not taken seriously because they're not the Spielberg type experience.
Yeah,
So she's saying that that's even warped our idea of what an experience is. Because people, when people really get personal about the types of things that have happened to them, it's not always just a thing, a saucer coming and landing in your backyard, right?
right.
It's very rare that that's even what people report at all. It's glowing balls of light and things flying off shelves and hearing voices of family members that you have been dead for 30
Yeah,
years. And dude, I've heard all sorts of stories of honest, honorable people But the thing is like, do I think they're lying? Do I think they're mistaken? Or do I think that there might be a trend here that if we compile enough data, we might actually notice something that's going on with these experiencers that we can like start to file out, you know?
Yeah. Sorry, I just got distracted. Jay Stratton just tweeted
What did he say?
a statement from Lou and himself. I guess I'll just read it. While working, yeah, this is a statement from Lou Elizondo and Jay Stratton. I'm reading this for the first time along with you. While working in the US government's UAP investigation known as ATIP, we knew based on credible data that UAP presents serious national security concerns and a potential existential threat. When we and our colleagues, or when we and our colleague Chris Mellon tried to raise alarm bells within the Pentagon, we were blocked by the bureaucracy and stigma surrounding the topic. Ultimately, we decided the only way to bring attention to this urgent matter was for Lou to resign in protest and go public to create awareness, while Jay used that change to move the topic forward within the government, eventually becoming director of the UAP task force. We swore oaths to serve the best interest of the American people, and this was the best way to do that. Our goal was to be the spark that would light a fire more powerful than antiquated bureaucracy and stigma. Yesterday, we proudly watched the fire continue to grow in a momentous congressional UAP hearing. Our brave friends and colleagues, former naval aviators Ryan Graves and Dave Fravor, and former Air Force intelligence officer UAP task force member David Grusch, offered themselves up as witnesses and spoke under oath about the topic to members of Congress and the public. We are grateful for all those who participated. This is still just the beginning. There is considerable progress to be made and work to do in order to understand and address the national security concerns. Please always remember that an informed public is a powerful force that can be wielded to create positive change. We will not be commenting further at this time, but know that we remain hard at work behind the scenes. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, he's a guy that stays on the outskirts, you know,
Yeah,
but you
totally.
know he has such a big presence behind the scenes. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of like who has access to Jay Stratton.
Yeah, man. He's Axelrod, you know. He's been through some shit.
I know that what's his name? George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell, they were talking about UAP and they were saying that Jay Stratton would be a great witness to bring forward because of his involvement with this topic. And I thought that was pretty interesting because those two were the first two to really point out to me his significance in like how many of these programs he's been involved with.
Yeah, it's rad. I mean, they're clearly like Lou was there, so he's clearly doing the same thing he's always done behind the scenes. You know, he's not fucking off like whatever. He's killing it, and he doesn't need the recognition. Like this makes it so clear to me that he wasn't just going on these shows just for the attention or like stuff like that. Like he's been behind the scenes now for like over a year, right? Like a lot longer than that. And he's still doing the same work he was doing. He's just doing it without all the attention focused on him, even though a lot of people are still focusing their attention on him for whatever the fuck reason, probably because they're being paid. I mean, at this point, it seems obvious that they're doing it for a reason. If he's not, like, why would you attack someone who's not out in the public? Because he's doing this work behind the scenes. And for some reason, they have a problem with that. It's I don't know. I don't mean to make accusations out of nowhere, but like seems pretty obvious to me that they have a very specific agenda if they're attacking Lou when he's not even saying anything in public ever. It's weird, right?
Yeah, dude. Lou could go on a podcast with like 2,000 views and they'll be like, look at this guy
He
just
was a
cashing
grifter.
out, dude. This is guy, what is he on a world tour, dude? Is he Lady Gaga now? Like what, how many millions did he make off of this
I
2,000
know,
view
dude.
podcast?
I don't get it, dude. But yeah, no, I think that's a good way to wrap it up, man. Yeah, man. The hearing was amazing. I'm really excited to see where this is going. I really think there's a lot to be positive about, and I would like to just thank David Grusch, um, Brian Graves and Dave Fravor for, sticking their necks out for the cause and being really, really brave and just being credible, being the credible people that we need leading this topic forward.
Yeah, and thank you to Representatives AOC and Matt Gaetz coming from both sides of the aisle and doing their homework and really showing good bipartisan leadership on this topic. And I encourage our elected representatives to keep that going, because that was beautiful.
Yeah, it's great to see Raskin in there too. That guy is dog on a bone when it comes to getting to the bottom of corruption. So really exciting shit, man. And yeah, we'll see you next time, and appreciate you coming in. And yeah, have a good one. All right, bye.